Hello everyone, it's Glenda and welcome back to Creative Grandma. It's Stitch of the Week time, and this week I have stitch number 20, the plain or fancy grit stitch. This is a very simple stitch pattern, and there's two different ways that you can make it. So I'm going to show you my samples and explain a little bit about this stitch. Now, if you're new to crocheting and you only know how to do the single crochet, you're going to love the plain version because it just gives a little bit of a different look to that plain old single crochet. So this is just a one row repeat. We're going to do row 1 for the base row, and then you're going to repeat row 2 for the pattern. So this is my first sample, and you can see how beautiful that stitch pattern looks. And this is a reversible stitch pattern. So that's the front, and when you turn it over, it's going to look exactly the same on the back. Now here's my second sample, and this was just made with pure white. So I hope you can see the stitch detail. It just gives a little more interest to the single crochet stitches when you use the simple grit stitch. So that is my second sample. Now these two samples was for the simple grit stitch. So here they are, and this is just using 2 single crochet for the pattern. So now we're going to move along, and I'm going to show you the fancy grit stitch. So here is my first stitch pattern of the fancy grit stitch, and the difference between the two stitch patterns is that this stitch pattern you're using a single crochet and a double crochet. The method is the same, you're just transferring that second single crochet and working a double crochet, and it just gives a beautiful look to the grit stitch. So that's the front, and when you turn it over, it's going to look exactly the same on the back. So we just love these reversible stitch patterns. So that is my first sample of the fancy grit stitch. Now my second sample was made using a red heart self-striping yarn, and I believe this was called Retro Stripes. Some reason that sticks in my mind. Now this was a heavier 4 medium weight yarn, so it had a really tight, thicker look to this sample. And again, it depends on the brand of your yarn. I can have several 4 medium weight yarns, and they could all look completely different depending on the weight of the yarn, because again, this is a thick 4 medium, so you can see that was a lighter weight 4. But those are my samples. So now what you want to do is grab yourself some yarn, and whatever yarn you're using, make sure you bump that hook size up at least 1 hook size from what your yarn label recommends. So I'm going to grab my yarn and let's get started. So now we're ready to begin our sample swatch. Now with this stitch pattern, it is a multiple of 2. So you would chain 2 again, and just keep chaining in multiples of 2 until you get it to the width you want. So today we're going to go ahead and chain 12. You're going to yarn over, pull through the loop on your hook, and that creates your first chain. Yarn over, pull through, that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So now we're going to start row 1, which is our base row. We're going to skip that first chain, insert into the next chain. Now you can decide whether you want to work into the chain or into the back loop. It's up to you. I'm just going to go ahead and work right into the chain. I'm going to skip the first chain, insert into the second chain, work a single crochet. Yarn over, pull through that chain. You have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. Your single crochet is made. Now we're going to go ahead and start our repeat. We're going to skip the next chain and work 2 single crochet into the next chain. Insert into that chain, work 2 single crochet. 1 and 2. And that is the end of the repeat. Let's do it again. Skip the next chain, insert into the next chain, work 2 single crochet. 1 and 2. And that is the end of the repeat. And we're going to repeat that across to the last 2 chain. So let's continue. Skip the next chain, work 2 single crochet into the next chain, 1 and 2. Skip the next chain, insert into the next chain, work 2 single crochet, 1 and 2. So I'm over to my last 2 chains. Now if you're working on a larger project, you're just going to continue and skip the next chain and work 2 single crochet into the next chain and repeat that across to the last 2 chains. So now to end the row, we're going to skip the next chain and we're going to work just 1 single crochet into that ending chain. Row 1 is finished. So our base row is finished, that's row 1, and now we're going to do row 2, which is our repeat row. So to begin row 2, you're going to chain 1 and you're going to turn your work. Now you're going to be working on the wrong side when you work those even number rows. So if you're new to crocheting, you might not know where your stitches are. So you can just turn your work towards you and then you can see the top of those stitches. So let's go ahead and start row 2. You're going to skip that beginning chain 1. You're going to insert into the very first stitch, insert under the top 2 loops and work just 1 single crochet. Now we're going to start our repeat. You're going to skip the next stitch, insert into the next stitch, going under the top 2 loops, work 2 single crochet, 1 and 2. And that is the end of the repeat. So let's do it again. Skip the next stitch, insert into the next stitch, work 2 single crochet, 1 and 2. And that is the end of the repeat. And we're going to repeat that across to just the last stitch. So let's go ahead and continue. Skip the next stitch, insert into the next stitch, work 2 single crochet, 1 and 2. Skip the next stitch, insert into the next stitch, work 2 single crochet, 1 and 2. And again, if you're working on a larger project, just continue skipping 1 stitch, work 2 single crochet into the next, and you're going to repeat that across to your very last stitch. And again, if you're new to crocheting, you should have a stitch marker in this last stitch so you know where your last stitch is. To end the row, you're going to work just 1 single crochet into that last stitch. And that is the end of row 2. So all you have to do for this pattern is just repeat row 2. So now I'm going to go ahead and repeat row 2 again, but I'm going to do it at a faster pace. You're just going to repeat row 2 by chaining 1, turn your work, skip the first chain, work 1 single crochet into that first stitch, skip the next stitch, 2 single crochet into the next stitch, skip the next stitch, 2 single crochet into the next stitch, skip the next stitch, 2 single crochet into the next stitch, skip the next stitch and 2 single crochet into the next stitch. And again, you're going to repeat that where you're skipping 1 stitch, 2 single crochet into the next. You're going to work that across to within the last stitch of the row. To end the row, you'll only have 1 stitch remaining and you're going to work just 1 single crochet into that last stitch. So that's all there is to doing the plain grit stitch. And again, when you keep on working, this is what your stitch pattern's going to look like. So now I'm going to go ahead and change my yarn to a different color, and now we'll do the fancy grit stitch. So now we're ready to begin our second stitch pattern for the fancy grit stitch, and I just changed colors to a pale orchid, and these are the Premier Basic colors I'm using for my samples. So let's go ahead and chain 12 again. Again, this is the same multiple of 2. You're going to yarn over, pull your yarn through the loop on your hook, and that creates your first chain. The loop on your hook does not count as a chain. That's 1. Yarn over, pull through, that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So now we're ready to begin row 1. Again, this is the fancy grit stitch. You're going to skip the first chain. You're going to work 1 single crochet into the second chain from hook. Now we're going to start our repeat. You're going to skip the next chain, work a single crochet into the next chain. Now we're going to work a double crochet into that same chain. You're going to yarn over, insert into that same chain, yarn over, and pull through. You have 3 loops, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, and pull through 2. That's how you make a double crochet. So let's do the repeat again. You're going to skip the next chain, and we're going to work 1 single crochet and 1 double crochet into this next chain. So single crochet into that chain, and then double crochet back into that same chain. And that is the end of the repeat. Let's do it again. You're going to skip the next chain, single crochet into the next chain, and then double crochet back into that same chain. And that is the end of the repeat. We're going to repeat that across to the last 2 chains. We have 1 repeat to go. You're going to skip the next chain, insert into the next chain, work a single crochet. Now you're going to double crochet back into that same chain. And that is the end of the repeat. So if you're working on a wider project, then you're just going to continue and skip a chain, work a single crochet and a double crochet into the next chain. You're going to repeat that across to the last 2 chains. So now to end the row, you're going to skip the next chain and work 1 single crochet only into that last chain. And again, if you're new to crocheting, please put your stitch markers in that last stitch and then come back to that very first single crochet and put a stitch marker right into that first stitch. So again, our base row is finished, which is row 1, and now we're going to do row 2, which is the repeat row. We're going to begin, and you're going to chain 1. You're going to turn your work. You're going to skip that beginning chain 1, insert into that very first stitch under the top 2 loops, work 1 single crochet. So when you're working this pattern, you start the row with 1 single crochet and you end the row with 1 single crochet. So let's go ahead and work the repeat. You're going to skip that next double crochet. You're going to insert into that next single crochet under the top 2 loops, work 1 single crochet, and then double crochet back into that same stitch. And that is the end of the repeat. You're going to skip the next double crochet, insert into that next single crochet, work 1 single crochet, and then work 1 double crochet back into that same stitch. And that is the end of the repeat. Skip the next stitch, which is a double crochet, insert into that next single crochet, work a single crochet, and then double crochet back into that same stitch. And that is the end of the repeat, and you're going to repeat that across to within that last stitch. So we have 3 stitches remaining, which means we have 1 repeat to go. You're going to skip that next double crochet, insert into the next single crochet, work 1 single crochet, and then you're going to double crochet back into that same stitch. So again, if you're working on a wider project, maybe an afghan, then you're going to repeat, skip the next double crochet, work a single crochet and a double crochet into that next single crochet stitch. You're going to repeat that over to within your last stitch. So to finish the row, we're going to end the row with just one single crochet into that ending stitch. So row 2 is finished. So now to continue this pattern, you're just going to repeat row 2 until you get it to the length you want. So I'm going to work row 2 one more time with you. This time I'm going to work it a little bit faster. I'm going to chain 1 and I'm going to turn my work. I'm going to skip the beginning chain 1 and work one single crochet into that first stitch. I'm going to skip the next double crochet, insert into that next single crochet, work a single crochet, and then work one double crochet back into that same stitch. That is the end of the repeat. We're going to repeat that across to the very last stitch. So let's continue. Skip that next double crochet, and if you're not sure, just turn your work. You're going to skip that next stitch, insert into the next stitch, which is a single crochet, work one single crochet, and then one double crochet back into that same stitch. Skip the next double crochet, insert into that next stitch, which is a single crochet stitch, work a single crochet, and then double crochet back into that same stitch. Skip the next stitch, which is a double crochet, and again you can turn your work and see that stitch, and you're going into the next stitch, which is a single crochet. You're going to work a single crochet and then double crochet back into that same stitch. So again, if you're working on a wider project, you're going to skip that next stitch, which is a double crochet, and then you're going to work one single crochet and one double crochet into that next stitch, which is a single crochet. You're going to repeat that across to your very last stitch. We're going to end the row by working one single crochet only into that last stitch. And that's all there is to doing the fancy grit stitch. So here are my samples again. This is a sample of the simple grit stitch. This is a sample of the grit stitch made in a solid color. And then we just changed one stitch to a double crochet and made it the fancy grit stitch. This is a fancy in a solid color. And then this is the fancy grit stitch in a self-striping yarn. I hope this video has got you inspired to pick up your crochet hook today and maybe try this simple stitch. Now remember, all of our Stitch of the Week patterns are free. They're available on our website, creativegrandma.net. Just click the Stitch of the Week banner. We have over 150 different stitch patterns. Just click on the name of the stitch and then you can download it right to your computer and print it out and follow along with the video. You can print out one or you can print them all out. So it's a great resource. Just go to creativegrandma.net and you can review all those Stitch of the Week patterns. So until next time, everyone, stay inspired and happy crocheting.